So Josh, every once in a while when we wake up in the morning, Rebecca and I will be sitting there and she'll look at me and she'll be like, gosh, what are you thinking about? And you know how women's minds race and they say, what could he possibly thinking about? It must be so deep. He's coming up with something really good. And I usually am like, yeah, I'm thinking about the Bills, right? And not your Bills, the Buffalo Bills, right? I'm thinking about football.
That would be you, yeah.
Yes, that'd be me as a Bills fan. So the other day, it happened again, and I got a little deeper with it. I said I was thinking about Mitch Trubisky.
That's outstanding.
Yes. We'll get to the back nine right after this. So, buddy, so just to clarify, Mitch Trubisky was about to play. He's the backup quarterback for the Bills. And I was like, I knew he was playing that day. So, and I wasn't actually thinking about that, but I thought, I'm just going to tell her I'm thinking about the Bills' backup quarterback.
So I have two thoughts about that. First of all, Mitch Trubisky is not the name of a quarterback. It's the guy you sat next to in trigonometry class and probably stole your answers off. That's one.
Spoken like a true Bears fan.
Yeah, well, I had my Mitch Trubisky experience, and I'm glad that's over. Second, have you seen that meme? There's a meme where there's a woman looking, the guy's got his back to her in bed and she's wondering what he's thinking about. And it's always something silly.
That's exactly
There's whole memes about that.
That's what I mean.
The woman is always thinking
he's thinking about ex-girlfriend.
And he's thinking, I can't believe I missed that putt on 17.
Right. That's exactly what it is. So that's our running joke. And now we just make stuff. I just make stuff up. Like I probably am like actually meditating or thinking about something relatively stoic.
Right.
And serious. I'm not thinking about the Bills or Mitch Trubisky, but I always just say something funny now that I'm thinking about. It's
what do you think,
stupid.
What do you think she's thinking about when she first wakes up in the morning?
She's thinking, can I go back to sleep? Yeah. She's thinking, do I have to get up now? Yeah. She's not like me, right out of bed. She needs the time. That's the Mars and Venus. She needs the time to like slowly get up.
But what if she was also thinking about Mitch Trubisky? He's a good looking guy. I mean...
Well, good point. I mean, doesn't every Buffalo Bills fan that's a woman think about Josh Allen? Probably.
Maybe so, yeah. Buffalo.
Yeah.
Not the backup. You just go with the starter.
Well, we are very, very delighted to have guests in studio. We always love the in-studio thing. We've got Carolina Rush and Andrea Trout from Sweet and Spicy. Now, how did you get top billing, Andrea? It was sweet first, because it could be spicy and sweet. I guess it's sweet and spicy is the expression. But anyway, great to have you both. We decided that we're going to change the name of the back nine to Calm. What do we say?
Calm and Chaos.
Calm and Chaos. And try to guess who's who.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can.
It's still up for debate.
I will say this. The calm person does not think about Mitch Trubisky.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Anyway, great to have you guys on. Tell us how your show came about. We've talked about how our show came to life. How did your show come to life?
So I think we were thinking about doing a podcast for the Chamber initially a couple of years ago. And for many reasons, we weren't able to launch it. So I was like, gosh, I think it would be really fun. How could I do it anyway? So I reached out to Andrea. I was like, hey, do you want to do a podcast? She's like, I've actually been thinking about that. And not even 3 weeks later, we were done. We had our name. I mean, we were like that. Janine, we were in the studio.
We have the same producer. Yep.
Yeah, I think picking the name was probably the hardest part.
It's a great name.
Yeah, I don't even know how we came up with it, but I think it was the, blonde, sweet, all-American girl next door and the Latina. So sweet and spicy.
It's perfect.
It's
perfect. Yeah, it's great.
Which is really how we are. She's very sweet, and I can be sweet, but I'm also very spicy.
You lean spicy.
Yeah, you definitely lean.
I can be calm, but I'm normally chaotic.
We obviously know what your podcast is about, but for the purpose of introduction to our audience, what do you guys choose to focus on most of the time?
We have a variety of topics, but it's usually relevant to women in their 40s and 50s. Particularly, we talk a lot about relationships and dating because we're both single. Carolina's been married and has kids. I'm not. So that's kind of what we focus on. So we have somebody who comes on and talks about skincare and health from that perspective because, we all like to look good. So we talk in that range, and we've had a lot of guests. We just have fun. It's fun.
And we've, done things like talking about menopause and midlife crises and things like that. So
mental health, social media.
Yeah, so you guys are the back nine for women, basically.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny how it's very
the shows are very similar. We tackle a lot of that stuff, too. We haven't tackled menopause yet, but maybe we will.
Dealing with menopause, because we certainly have partners or have had partners who have gone through it or are going through it. So it does impact the relationship, of course.
Right, for sure.
And men actually have their own version of it. There's a form when your testosterone drops.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's relevant to men, like something to think about that might be relevant to your listeners.
Yeah.
No, there is. And then you guys do a lot of dating. You do dating and matchmaking stuff. I listened to your episode with the matchmaker. How fun is that? Do you guys learn anything yourselves for your own dating life from your guests?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, doing this has been extremely therapeutic for me. And it's been like a new outlet, form of expression. But I've also learned a lot. And then having the matchmaker on just seemed appropriate for our topic or, for what we talk about. And that was phenomenal. Very interesting.
Yes. I mean, it's a perspective that you don't get very often in this day and age because they used to be more frequent but you don't run across them very often now. You think, oh, it's a Jewish matchmaker or maybe it's an Indian matchmaker like we see in those shows, right? But she's not. She focuses on South Florida, although she does do it nationwide. But it was so fascinating to hear. Like, she goes to a chamber networking thing. Carolina works for the chamber, but this woman's members at chambers from Florida to the Palm Beach. And she goes there because she's trying to meet you and you might be single. And she has a client that she might want to have you go on a date with.
Sure.
Like, what a job.
Yeah, that's wild.
And she goes, it's because finding a partner is a full-time job. And I'm like, it's not untrue.
Now, is she married?
She has a boyfriend.
Okay.
So they live together, it sounds like.
Would it be frowned upon if you were a matchmaker and you were married? Would that be okay? Because I'm trying to think if I might do this.
Think so.
I was telling Josh on the ride over here that I think I would be really good at matchmaking for guys. Like if I went around.
And what makes you say that?
I just think I would be able to help them understand, like if I got to know them, what to look for and the pitfalls in women. I've been through the ringer a couple times and found the right person. And I think it's life experience. I think that's what a good matchmaker would be. It would be about life experience and being able to,
I think I'd be terrible because I'd be like, red flag, red flag, red flag. Everything's a red flag.
Well, and so that's interesting, right? We had a guest on, Brian Howie, who talked about in dating, especially at this age, men look for green lights and women look for red flags.
Exactly.
So as we've talked about being on the backside of it and, how to get over it after you've been through the ringer, we've also talked about what it's like for guys out there. What is it like for women on the scene at the front end of dating, flirting, where to meet people? How do you guys approach it? What have you found out there?
So her and I have very different.
I love that. I love that you guys have had different experiences.
She's all about online dating, and I've done that in the past and had not so great.
Well, I disagree
outcomes.
with that characterization, but go ahead.
You've done online
I've done
dating.
it. She just
more-
is opposed to it,
Right.
whereas
Okay.
I'm not fully opposed to it. But it is fairly terrible. Let's be real. Online dating is not fun for most people. I don't think anybody out there is like, this is fun. If they are, I would like to talk to them. And what we've learned through like what we've kind of talked about and with the matchmaker and stuff, you're sorting and you're trying to sort quickly the ones
You're
that aren't
swiping, yeah.
serious, the ones that aren't there for the right reasons of what you're looking for, the ones that don't have values that are similar. So that when you approach it from that perspective, it becomes a little bit different. And then, making sure that your time when you are there, like, is it somebody you really connect with? Is there something more? And it's beyond looks, right? At this point, I think for most people, it's, yes, that has to be there, but it's values for me at least. So
Now, do you need to connect right away or do you give people that you like a chance? I'm always curious as that because some women are always like, I've got to have that instantaneous spark or I'm done.
I'll tell you, and I don't know if you guys heard it on the podcast, but the last guy I met online was on Tinder. And when we first met, he was so not like man bun, I was like, what is this? So, and his picture had his face covered because he was a fisherman and was wearing one of those things, but he had his kids on either side of him and they were really cute. So I was like, well, he must be good looking if his kids are that cute. So I was like, I'm just going to step outside the box and I'm going to go out with this guy, even though I really don't know what he looks like. So when we met, I was like, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? So, but I was like, I'm going to give it a couple more dates. And I would say by the 5th date, I was head over heels in love. And we were together for 4 years.
Wow.
And I told him, I don't like the bun. It's got to go. And he cut it. He cut his hair off 3 weeks
Wow.
later.
Hey, wow.
Wow.
So
I
I'm
know, right?
I always tell people, think outside the box, be open-minded, because you never know, people will grow on you. They'll become attracted. And he ended up being he's actually a very attractive guy. It was just the man bun that was really throwing me off. So yeah, I give people chances.
But you had good chemistry with him from the beginning, right?
Yeah, the first date was a little, it's always a little awkward.
Yeah, well,
But yeah.
No man in their 40s and 50s should be wearing a man bun. None. Zero. Zilch.
Correct.
Right.
And also, what you were asking before about what's it like for us. For me in particular, like I notice the guys that are a little bit younger are just so immature, and the guys that are a little bit older, I feel like I'm dating my dad. So I haven't found that sweet spot yet.
That's interesting.
I thought you were going to say the young guys are immature and the older guys are also immature. I thought that's where you're going to go with that. How do you guys make it fun? Right. I think when I first got divorced, I leaned into, this is going to be fun. I'm going to get to meet all of these different people who previously I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet. And I like people.
Right.
So how is it different from a female perspective?
Well, for mine, I think it's a little different. I think it's different for women than it is for men, in the sense that I think we're a little bit more skeptical. I also have safety in the back of my mind. And I'm always wondering, is this the serial killer that I'm about to meet up with?
Yeah.
All those episodes of Dateline.
You're
in the
kidding.
back of your head.
You're but
TV.
I've asked, I had a friend of mine, a female, who said, wasn't sure about going on a date. I said, go on the date. What's the worst that can happen? And she said, I could get killed.
Yes.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. I
mean,
suppose you could.
it has
I hadn't
happened.
thought about that, because not likely to happen for the guy.
Right. And also on the online profiles, 90% of the time, they're not telling the truth. So you don't really know who you're meeting. I mean, you could write whatever you want all day long, but it doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
Have you guys thought about, though, the fact that what I said when I was dating in between marriage, long relationship, and then a breakup, I did some online dating during COVID. And you were able to do the first call like on FaceTime or Zoom. Do you guys still do that? Like, is that still a thing? Like, it was such a thing for a while and it was awesome because you didn't have to go on an actual date if you didn't like the person.
Yeah.
Do you still do that?
It's
Can you
such
do
a
that?
thing now. It's still a thing, and even more of a thing after COVID, to the point where I'm like, why can't we have normal phone calls like we used to? Everybody wants to do FaceTime and Zoom still. And
Well, there's something to be said for it because, again, like Carolina's point, that not everybody is honest.
Right. That's what I mean.
And so you have a way less chance of being catfished, or their pictures are 20 years old.
Yes.
They're trying to misrepresent themselves. So like we have a friend, she's in a relationship now, but she was online and she's like, I make everybody do a Zoom, because she would go and they're 25 years older than they represent themselves to be.
I would do that. I would say
Yeah.
everybody should do that. Have your first call be FaceTime or Zoom, and get, if it doesn't even have to be that long. If you're like, okay, you're normal, let's go out.
Yeah.
Let's go get coffee.
What are some of the best might not be the right word here, but most creative, biggest lies that guys presented in their online profiles, or some good stories from that perspective?
I'm like, Lord. I mean, honestly, I went out with a guy. He was who he said he was, like maybe a little bit older than his pictures were showing. But the stories that he was telling me, he was in these like 50 dating group, and he would have women that were mad because they would put their profile pictures on Facebook, again, were 20 years ago. And then they would show up and he was like, you're not who you look like. And they'd be mad at him. And I'm like, how are they mad? I don't know. Like, I don't understand it, because I am such a person. I am going to put out there who I am. So it's mind boggling to me that people lie. Like, you're not going to get caught the minute you walk in the door to see somebody.
Well, the number one thing I put on my dating profile was I was looking for authenticity. So you're immediately, literally the number one thing I was looking for is I want somebody who's authentically themselves, not just looks wise, but personality wise. So I would have been over that hump. As soon as they didn't look authentic, you would have been.
I mean, one thing you can see too is like, that's a big red flag. If they say they're in crypto, pretty much just assume it's a catfish from Europe trying to get money. If they're into crypto at all, they say that's their job or something, you just know that's a catfish.
Wow.
Yeah. I found that too on the other side. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, like, so there's a group I'm not going to say what it is, but basically you can go, it's mostly women. I'm sure there's some men in there with female profiles, but you're looking to see if you're dating the same guy or who's cheating. And it's pretty respectful. I will say that you don't post like all the details, but it's like, you might say, you know, Joe Smith, Miami, right? Well, there might be 17 Joe Smiths in Miami, so they might post a dating profile, but I will tell you how many men on there that get caught because they're married or engaged or in a relationship and they're out there dating. So like the stories in that group are wild.
I had planned on starting the online dating this month again, but more for entertainment purposes. And then,
More for the show.
Right.
I'm doing it for the show.
Research.
And then I found out about that site. And so the Facebook group. So I went in there and the horror stories and I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know if I want to do this. And then there's pictures being posted and, oh yeah, he's married. And well, I went out with him last night. And I'm like, I mean,
Whoa.
it's one after the other. And I was like, this is crazy. So this is what's out there. This is what's out there. But then
Well,
again,
it's not exclusively what's out there.
right.
But
And every now and again, you'll get a really good story of a girl who said, I went out with this guy. He had gone on a date with somebody else, but they weren't exclusive yet. She's like, well, guess what? We just got married. Like they'd been dating. So you get those good stories too. They're more few and far in between than the crazy stories.
And sometimes they still can work. And I'll tell you about the ex that I told you about from Tinder. About 3 months into our relationship. Now, mind you, my daughter was much younger. So I always was either home or got a babysitter and stayed local. So he lived in Fort Lauderdale at the time. And so he would always come to my house. And about 3 months after we started dating, he says, I have to tell you something. And so he sits me down and he says, do you remember our first date? And we drank and whatever. And he said, well, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I fell off the wagon after 8 months on our first date. And I'm also a recovering pill addict. And I'm also bipolar and I am not medicated. And I've also been living in a halfway house. All of that. I had no idea.
And you stayed with him for another 4 years.
By the time, and I'm glad I did in a sense, because from that moment on, I supported him in his sobriety. I didn't drink alcohol for 1 year, even though I had no issue with it. But I was like, this isn't going to work if I drink. So, and we spoke not too long ago, actually. He's going on 10 years sober. So you just never know. But he waited until, I'm already in too deep. I'm not going to leave.
But now, those red flags pop up? Would you have stayed, do you think, at this point?
I don't know. It's hard to say what you would
probably
do.
depends on the person that you're with. There was something that you trusted in him.
Right.
Yeah.
So can we ask how it ended? I mean, it's a breakup. I mean, breakup stories you don't have to share it with us unless
Oh, no. I'm an open book, and I've already talked about it on the show. So have you ever heard of addiction transference?
Yes.
So
I know what that is, yeah.
He replaced his addictions with a sex addiction that I wasn't aware of. And come to find out, for the first year, everything was okay. But for the last 3 years, he had been cheating on me the entire time on a weekly basis with escorts.
Whoa.
And we lived together for the last 2 years of our relationship. And it would be where he left the house and at 7 a.m, he's going to one of those happy ending spas around Fort Lauderdale or whatever on his lunch break, on his way home. And the reason why I never really thought anything for a long time was he was home with me every night. He didn't drink. He didn't go out. He didn't do drugs. He was home and in bed every night by 8 o'clock at night. This was happening during the day, during his work hours. And so I went as far as like looking up all the phone numbers in his phone, and it would be under John or Joe. And when it would come up escort service or the actual escort. Tons of phone numbers like that.
Oh my gosh.
And then in his GPS, I would look at that. And he was at La Quinta yesterday at 1 p.m. And and then I got a hold of the phone records and saw them all there. And he confessed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at that point.
That's a little shell-shocked when you go back out in the dating world from that and try to find somebody, right?
Yeah. And that, it's taken me a good 6 years to recover from that
Really?
heartache. Yeah.
Okay. You guys seem both very confident and independent. Is that intimidating? You know, when you have, we always say, you know, you've got to be really comfortable being alone to be really solid in a relationship. You have to get with that space where you're not codependent, you're not relying on, you don't need a man in your life, but you'd like to have a man in your life. So how difficult is that? Are you guys both kind of intimidating to some men as independent women?
Regard. No, I don't think in that regard. I think I'm probably more intimidating because I'm told I'm unapproachable.
See, I disagree with you because I think you get approached, and we've talked about this, whereas I'm like, I don't know what I do, but I don't feel like anybody ever approaches me in public. So I flat out asked her, and I'm like, do I have like resting bitch face? You know, am I like super unapproachable? She's like, no. I'm like, I never get approached in public. So I don't know. It's really weird. But I definitely am more confident now than I used to be. And that's one thing I've always struggled with because I've lost a lot of weight. And I think that played a lot into it beforehand. So now I feel my confidence is way higher than it's ever been in my adult life for sure. So that's why I'm like, if you like confidence, you should approach me. But, you know, I am dating somebody at the moment and we met offline. It was through friends. So I haven't been in that area lately, you know, where I'm like looking for somebody to approach me. But before that, like, sure, but nobody ever did.
But in all fairness to us, like we don't really put ourselves in a position to be approached because we're either with a gang of 20 girls hanging out or we're at a chamber event. And there's not a lot of opportunity at a chamber event.
Although you tell them about last night.
So we were at Habitat for Humanity fundraiser at the Seagate, and everybody's wearing pink. And we're walking in, and there's these 3 guys walking back from the golf course with their bags and all of that. And they're like, what's with all the pink? And we're like, oh, we're having a fundraiser for Habitat, whatever. It's like, oh, well, we want to come. And I was like, go ahead. Men are allowed. Well, I didn't think they were serious. And 5 minutes later, here they come walking in the door with their golf gear. And, you know, they're like, well, you're not registered. And he's like, well, how much money do I need to give you to get in here? So he gave a big donation. They came in, ended up talking. They were like one of the few guys that were there. And one of them ended up asking me for my number. We exchanged numbers. And
it's the golf thing.
Yeah.
So
it's a golf thing.
Yeah.
You guys have to, we've talked about this on the show. Women that decide to play golf, we did a whole show on this with the Talk Birdie to Me ladies that have a show out in Scottsdale, is that all the women that come to them, it's all based on a man. They either want to play golf with a man, meet a man, or get away from a guy and play golf. Like there's always, the guy is the underwriting thing for all women who want to take up or be around golf. It is a good way to meet decent guys.
Interesting.
Well, it does speak, and to your story, Carolina, that if you want to meet somebody, you got to go to where people are. It's hard to do it inside your house, even swiping on the apps.
Yes.
It's better if you can be in person, especially if it's something that you already like to do. You're going to maybe have some kind of a common interest. And good for those guys, by the way, to identify a target-rich environment, right? I want to go back earlier. Earlier, you guys talked about exclusivity, right? And when is an appropriate time, do you think, to take? Because going back, there's always going to be some time where as you're meeting other people, the chances are you're going to be trying to date or find other people, to multiple people at one time. It might be a date or two. Most of them probably won't get to a second date. When is an appropriate time to go exclusive? What has been your experience around those?
It's so interesting.
That time.
So I listened to this relationship expert. Her name's Alison Armstrong. Have you ever listened to her?
I've not.
So she says, and I'm like, this is so true. This is something I had to learn. She's like, you're a woman. She goes, men, you might date a woman and you like talk out loud about your plans, but you're not really exclusive with her yet until there's a date. Do you like this band? We should go see them sometime. That's not a plan. Until you say to a woman as a man, this is her point, not mine. So you guys tell me if she's right. Let's go see the band on this day and time. That's a plan. Now you want her to do that versus just saying it out loud. You're kind of like seeing if it fits in your life. She says, women, we waved you at the stop sign. We're in a relationship. And I'm like, right. It's not untrue. So it really was an adjustment for me to be like, oh, we went on a date. That doesn't mean we're dating exclusively. I had to adjust. I feel like I'm cheating on somebody if I went on a date with them and then we have a second date planned. Was very challenging for me to have another date.
That's interesting.
Yes. Yeah. I had to adjust. And that's what her point. She said, women have to learn how to date, go on a date, and you're not in an exclusive relationship.
I think for me, it's a little bit different. I'm a little bit more old school and old fashioned when it comes to relationships. So I typically, I'm not saying I haven't ever had a one night stand or, but typically I'm not into that. And I will make a guy wait a while. So for me, it's when we start having sex, I expect you not to be having sex with anybody else. And at that point, that would be the time that the conversation would need to be had.
Yeah, you're transparent about it, though. You
Right.
make that very clear to
Right.
your significant other, and that's important. So that's good.
I'm with you on that. I wasn't always that way, but I certainly am. I mean, I'm in a relationship now, but even when I was dating before, that's kind of my thing. Is with,
Right.
if I'm sleeping with somebody, I should only be sleeping with one person at a time.
Right.
But I don't think that's the way that if you are, and to her point, this is why it's harder. The apps, you have to make that very clear with somebody.
And that's
'Cause
something I will
not the
actually
agreement.
put in my profile. I will specifically say, if you're looking for a one night stand or something like that, whatever, you keep swiping. This is
A
I'm not the one.
situationship is what I think
Yeah.
they call it now.
Situationship.
A situation.
That's
You have
such
to
a
be very
convenient
clear.
word, right?
Yes.
That's
You have
right.
to be very clear.
That's right. Well, you guys have a great show, and I feel like we'll be doing more of this. If you guys ever want any advice from the back nine guys, we're here for you.
We do
From
like
calm
it.
and chaos.
I like having the man's perspective. We've had a few men on from their perspective, and I just love it because you realize how different we think.
Yeah.
So this is one question. So to your point about thinking about Mitch Trubisky, how often do you think of the Roman Empire? Do you ever think of the Roman Empire?
Hourly.
Are you serious? I was like, I
not
don't
at
think
all.
you're serious.
No.
But it was a joke like on social media
Yeah.
a while ago, and women would ask their husband or boyfriend or whatever, and men would be like, oh, at least once a day or once a week or several times a week. And women were like, what? Like,
What? Why? Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently they're like, oh, it's the foundation of civilization, and they built this and the roads and the money and like, so apparently you guys are not the norm.
All true, but I don't think about that very often.
I was like, who thinks about the Roman
The
Empire,
Roman Empire.
ever? But
Before we wrap up, what do you think are what are the questions that you think are on just to prepare our audience? What are some of the questions that are on the minds of women as they enter relationships that guys should be prepared to answer to?
I mean, are you looking for a serious relationship? Are you looking for something casual? What are you looking for in a woman? Because if you tell me 10 things, at least I'm going to tell you I'm not your match if I don't, fall into those categories. What about you?
I mean, I go back to thinking about the guy we had on that was on like millionairematch.com, but he was mad that they wanted to date him for his money. And it's like, that's where I'm like, be very clear about what you're willing to do and not do when it comes to like financial aspects, or because I do think that there are women out there that don't need a man for finances, and that's fine. Just make it very clear what you're willing to do. Because I'm like, you have the finances, and he wanted somebody that had all the time and all this, but he didn't want to have to pay for everything. And
also, like I told him, what do you think is going to happen if you
Right.
go
Yeah.
on Millionaire Match? What do you think you're going
Right.
to attract? So
be clear, I guess. That to me is the most important thing. Just be who you are. You don't have to put it all out on the table in the beginning, but don't try to hide who you are and what you want.
it's going to come out regardless. So why waste time?
And at this point in our lives, like, who has time for that? Just go to who you want, what you want quickly.
Yeah, it comes back to the word authenticity. I mean, I think that's really the bottom line. Everybody is looking for that person who's going to be straight up who they are. It sounds simple, but so many people have a wall up. They're phony, whether it's their social media profile or just in person in front of you. They're not really who they say they are.
Yeah.
But even that's why I'm huge on meeting people organically, because even though you can still put up somewhat of a front, it's a lot harder
Right.
to hide. You can't hide behind anything. And it's to see your mannerisms and how you're behaving and how you're interacting with other people and all of that. So
Right.
Yeah. And if you can do 90 seconds on Charlemagne, that's an added bonus, right? So,
I got to Google this Roman Empire thing. I'm confused
you don't
now.
remember like 5th, 6th grade history?
Yeah, I gotta go back.
It's been a
and
long time.
Figure that all out. But thank you. Thank you both so much.
Yeah.
Oh, real quick plug for your business, which I love, Prime IV. As Josh knows, we've talked a lot about integrative wellness on this show. And part of my integrative wellness journey is being a member of Prime IV, your place. And I go in once a month and get an IV. And it's a great business. And I'm sure it's doing great. And congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah. And we just opened our West Boca location, and we have the downtown Delray one, and Wellington's coming soon. So it's expanding.
Yep. That
thank
IV
you. I
therapy's
appreciate
been,
that.
the IV therapy is huge. I also say it because I think it's an important thing for people's wellness journey to participate in that, whether they have health issues or not. There's a lot of different, I do the Myers cocktail, so every month, and
Shocker.
it's good. And it's been great. So
Thank you.
Awesome.
I appreciate that.
All right, Andrea, Carolina, thank you so much. Sweet and Spicy podcast, and we look forward to being on your show sometime
Absolutely.
soon.
Love
Yes,
it.
for sure.
All right, sit tight. We're going to wrap this up. Dennis, by the time this airs, we'll have done Potapalooza with them.
Mhm.
I think it's fun to be sharing space with them and to have these two parallel podcasts that I think can be informative to both genders.
yeah, and I think it's interesting to hear the mind of a single back nine woman because we've dated them, and now I'm married to one, and it's a journey. It's a journey to get to where I am now. It was a long road to get there, from divorce to bad relationships to good dates and all the stuff in between. When I jokingly said I think I could be a matchmaker, I think it's because I say that because I really do have a perspective on not just red flags, but the good things you're looking for in somebody. Like I mentioned, the authenticity and what's important. And if you find out what's important to you, I know what you're looking for. You knew what I was looking for. That's kind of why we started this show. And I think that's what you figure out. And I think everybody can figure that out at some point.
Do you think you would have known what your red flags were going into any kind of a first date situation
When
you were first dating?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think what you do is you realize when you come out of a divorce what your boundaries. We talked about boundaries. You realize like what you'll tolerate and what you won't.
I'm asking it from the other side, though.
Oh.
Being aware of what your red flags might be to an interested or a woman that you were going on a first date with.
I wonder what those would be. What my red flags would be.
Yeah.
Probably that I'm too honest.
Share too much.
I share too much. Yeah, I do. I share a lot. I do. It might be too much. I think that the thing that I had to work on, and we talked about this, was my own personal curiosity, less about me, more about you. Let me find out more about you. If you want to know about me, you'll find out about it in good time, but I'm going to find out about you. And it speeds up my process for the red flags, for knowing that I'm not pointing at you because I wanted to date you. I'm just saying
But who wouldn't,
But yeah, so that's kind of the way my perspective on it now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it would help guys to be aware of what they can perceive to be their weaknesses. Just know it going in, not to create doubt. You should have confidence about what you're doing, but to be aware of things, like Carolina was talking about, the guy who had, the addiction issues, to be aware that would be something that going into a situation, you would know that you would need to confront it at some point or share it at some point.
I think one thing that you have, one of my red flags would be for a lot of very, very strong women who think that their opinion is the only opinion and they don't know the difference between opinion and facts. Like, I state my opinion like it's facts. I would not do well. My red flag would be my opinions have to matter too. You don't have to agree with them, but don't state your opinions to me like they're facts, because there's a big difference. Yeah. And so I think that would be a mutual red flag. I think a lot of, and it's great. Women are strong these days. They don't need a man to take care of them, but a lot of them are just over opinionated, right? They're over and again, their opinions are stated like they're facts. And that's where I would draw the line.
Yeah, I think that's true for some men too.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
100% that's true for men, but you were asking.
Should be give and take. I was. Yeah.
Yeah, you were asking the other side of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. Well, I loved having them on. I look forward to seeing them, again, as we're recording this, we haven't seen Potapalooza yet, but to get to know them better and interacting with them here in South Florida and doing some things.
He's calm. I'm chaos.
Yeah.
They're sweet and spicy.
Love
and
it.
we'll see you next time on the Back Nine.